Hi, Rainey.
Hello, Linda. Hello, Emma.
Hi, Rainey. How are you?
Doing well.
Hi, Charles and Anna.
Hello.
Hi, Jack. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Glenn. Hello, Jack. Hi, Riley.
Hello.
Me and Mavis are going to hang out with Barbara.
Okay, well, it's almost 7, so I do have a few announcements. This is class 5 of 6. So next Monday is our last class of presenting the path, this 3rd module. And then we'll move into the spiritual teacher. And that won't start until June, which sounds crazy, until June 5th, Monday, June 5th. So that's the Monday after Memorial Day. And but there's lots and lots of other things happening at the center. We do have Exploring Buddhism, and for those of you, especially those who have went through some initiations back when Khensa Rinpoche was here, this particular set of teachings that we're currently doing in Exploring Buddhism is all about the Guru Yoga practice, and it is absolutely incredible. So I do highly recommend watching those teachings through the Exploring Buddhism class. If you have questions about how to access it, just text me, or not text me, put it in the chat and I'll show you how to do that. But they're really, really great. I got a lot out of the segment on Tara practice, and this one is equally good, if not even better. So definitely check those out. And then we also have the Buddhist Mind Science course coming up. This is module 3 in this pilot course. And that one happens on Saturdays. And we were going to have 4 Saturdays, the first 2 Saturdays of May from 10 to 12, and then the first 2 Saturdays of June. But the instructors have a commitment that they can't get out of on the last class. So that one will actually be 3 Saturdays. So we're looking at May 6th, 13th, and June 3rd. And that's a great course. It's an introductory course, and it does blend a lot of very practical things in Buddhism, and has some science components with it as well. So I do recommend that one if you have time. I know there's a lot going on. 2 more things I wanted to bring to your attention is if you go to our website, kadampa-center.org, we have, this on the main web page, a scrolling banner of pictures. And if you click on the one that pops up first, it was just posted today. It's about sponsoring a puja for Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan Monastery. So this is something that our center will be sponsoring at Kopan, and that would be for prayers for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's swift return to come back to teach us. Not in the form of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, but whatever form. I'm probably not explaining this very well. And then secondly, the second picture that pops up is information about Venerable Rabina Corton's upcoming visit. And she will arrive on May 17th and start teaching that evening and teach every day until Sunday, May 21st. So there are lots of ways to help make that teaching, those several days of teachings, go smoothly and actually happen successfully. So be sure to check out the web pages about her visit to see what she'll be teaching on, as well as ways you can help either financially or volunteering. We're going to need lots of volunteers. So there is a sign up page through Sign Up Genius on there as well. So be sure to check out all the exciting things happening at the center. Of course, my favorite place is kadampa-center.org, and go to that upper right-hand corner for the calendar. And that has all the information that you need. All right, now I will go ahead and turn it over to Hemant, and we can get started.
Thank you, Linda. And welcome to class number 5 of 6. And I want to first thank you for joining the class. And I'm hoping that there is some things that we've gone through are beginning to make sense. And so before we get going, let's do our prostrations. Okay. So if you're seated, just do it on your chair. If you're on the floor and you want to do the full prostration, that is fine too. So I'm just going to start with 3 prostrations. Om Namo Manjushri, Namo Shri, Namo Tamashri. All right, so this is the way it's done. If you want to just take a quick look at it, the 4 locations: crown, forehead, throat, and heart. All right, time to bring our self and mind to the teachings today, to the class. And so let's get into a position that you're familiar with now by keeping your back straight. Again, not rigid, just nice and straight. Your legs are crossed. If you're seated in a chair, the feet are on the floor. Just be comfortable. Okay? Your arms are again relaxed, but your right palm is on your left, hand is on your left hand, and your thumbs are touching, and about maybe two or three fingers below your navel. Just seated nicely, comfortable. Your head is slightly tilted forward, not completely down, just slightly tilted. Your neck is not stiff, in other words. Your jaw and mouth are also relaxed, and your tongue is sitting on the top of your mouth, behind the teeth on your palate, and your eyes are slightly open. Okay, so let's do that. And what you want to do is, as we do it every class, you want to focus on your breath. It's a neutral thing, and it helps with concentration. Okay, and what you find is when you're concentrating on your breath, simply the breath coming in and going in, out, right? In and out. So you can concentrate on your nostrils or on your tummy, whichever is comfortable. The point being, you just keep your mind on your breath. And you find that when you start something like this, your mind wants to wander, a thought will come through, and you, instead of chasing it, just gently remind yourself to go back to the breath and keep it there for a while. So let's do that for a minute. Okay, let's set up our motivation. So may this action here, this sitting together, listening to Buddha's ideas about happiness, about suffering, and about how things are, and the steps along the path to enlightenment, may listening to this strongly develop my potential in my mind. May I take some tools from these sessions to develop my own mind and its amazing potential to be of benefits to others, all the way to perfection, to Buddhahood, enlightenment. And may this action of being here today, listening to the teachings, the process, think about and apply them in our lives, be the cause of exactly that. Thank you, and bring your attention back. Okay, as Linda mentioned, this is class 5 of 6. And so we have one more class after this. So before we get going, there may be a lot of topics today. And to keep it a little simpler, in case we sense that it's a little bit too much and it's passing the time, we'll put it away and we'll start next, because we have a nice whole session and we can very easily cover all the sections properly. So just in case, it depends on how it goes and what the discussions are like, okay? So let's align ourselves a little bit again. And remember one thing before we get going. This is presenting the path. The idea is for an overview, so you understand how these 84,000 teachings were put together in a nice, concise, step-by-step way for us to be able to practice and integrate. That's the whole point, is integration. We can intellectualize all of these topics, and we can have our ideas and all that. But according to Buddha, this is what he found, this is what he experienced, and what the whole point is, you take it from here, analyze it. As Geshe-la would say, analyze it. And if it applies, if it works, then integrate it. And that's the whole idea, okay? So let's just quickly go through some of this, just aligning ourselves again, all the steps and where we are in this path. Okay, so we can say that we've covered scope 1. Remember the 3 scopes. The 3 scopes are almost like we are pretty familiar with our school, right? Kindergarten, junior school, middle school, high school, college. We can understand that. So this was put together in a very precise way so that people can advance slowly and steadily, and they can deep dive into any topic that they feel to learn more about. Okay, so we certainly started with the foundation of understanding that everything stems from your mind, not somewhere outside. It's your mind. So we had a contemplation. We thought about it and we said it's beginningless, it's non-physical, it's not your brain. And what you create your own reality based on your mind. So we kind of talked that. We all recognize that we need a mentor, a teacher, a guide. This is where people get a little leery, right? Because whenever it comes to teacher or a word guru, people get scared. It's really, you need to analyze that. You need to certainly check the teacher out, check the teacher's peers, see what they are teaching, what they are practicing. And just like teacher is choosing a student is able to choose a good teacher. We all need guide. We all had parents, we've all had teachers. If we could learn entire Buddhism online, that would be an amazing feat. But as you will find, that there are many questions that stem in your mind, in your notions. And we need somebody to give us a good guidance and lead us nice and easily. So we need a teacher. And then we truly got and jumped into the long rim a little bit, and that was the precious human rebirth. And I'm hoping that you remember why this is precious. Okay, we call it precious human rebirth. Why? Because it's rare. Okay, in samsara, it's full of different dimensions, realms, whatever you want to call it, but you get a very rare moment to be a human. And this is the opportunity where you can actually change your direction, if you may. So we are all in samsara apparently. So we've had deluded mind, good mind, bad mind, all of that put together in a package. Here's your chance to do a paradigm shift, or you can change your direction towards the positive states of mind. Why? Because we all like happiness. We all want to become a Buddha. We all want to be liberated. And that's the point, right? So we talked about precious human rebirth, and we can say there are many richnesses in this life. We have some faculties that we can listen and see and talk. Yeah? We are in a community where we can learn from each other. We have a human life, right? So we are not mentally unstable, all of us. And so there are so many richnesses we have to take this opportunity. So then we start preparing to understand. And this is what I call a primer. We talk about death and impermanence. We definitely know death is permanent, that is definite. Time is uncertain. And what can help us is a positive state of mind. And Dharma helps you with that. And why? Because you don't want to be in a state of mind where you are suffering. And we talked about the 6 realms: God realm, demigod realm, human realm, animal realm, ghost realms, and hell realms. Okay? You can think about, if you don't believe in any of those things, you can think about some pragmatic examples, or very practical examples. Think of places where there's right now bombs falling, places where there are earthquakes, places where there is a famine, people don't have water. And I mean, it's mind-blowing suffering in many ways, right? So we are pretty lucky to be here and be actually talking about this Dharma right now. So suffering rebirths. And then what happens? You say, oh my goodness, I recognize it and my life is short, but I want to do something. So you make a commitment and you take refuge, right? So it's a beautiful ceremony. And we can all, some of you already have taken refuge and understand it. So at least you can understand what refuge is all about. Then we talked about karma, right? Laws of karma. We talked about the 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. This is where the practice actually begins. Why? Because you're going to say, maybe before I do something, let me pause. Let me change that. If you had a negative thought, anger, stealing, maybe I took something, maybe I should return it. Maybe I should think before taking it. All these thoughts are positive states of mind, but you want to avoid the negative states of mind. those are the 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind we talked about. Then we also talked about, so let me just move forward a little bit. So, and we are right here. Sorry. So then we talked about how karma ripens in four ways. Again, this is a very complex subject. There's a whole module on it, but to get your just mind, at least in basic understanding of it, that you have a fully ripened result. So the birth you may take next life is based on your previous actions. Also during the death, when you leave your body, what's in your mind may be the throwing karma for your next life. So that's your fully ripened result. Actions similar to the cause, right? And you can understand that if you've done something, you sow the seed, you're going to reap the fruit, right? If the fruit is growing in your garden, you certainly sowed it, right? So you can look at it so many ways. And then third one is experience similar to the cause. You wonder why people don't respect you, why you feel like people are stealing from you, or why people don't seem to listen to you. Think of things we may have done in the past, and that's one linear way of looking at it. And then, of course, the environmental karma. You could be born in a community where there is no water and no food. You could be born in a place where there is, of course, war zone right now. It could be like an environmental karma, actually blossoming at that point. So those are the few things about karma. And karma is a law. It is not a reward or a punishment. Nobody over there is sitting, I like Rainy and I don't like Linda, right? It's not like that. It is purely your mind. You do it, cause and effect. And think about it. It may sound strange in the beginning when you say these words, but if you just sit back and think, what's in your mind? We know mind is continuous, right? It comes from a previous thought. That previous thought came from its previous thought. It continues. And the logic would say, that's how it will go on. Your current thought will lead to the next, correct? So if it continues, and if your mind is filled with nothing but poison or bad thoughts, guess where your desire will be? You will wind up in that kind of a lifestyle. That's the very simply put, right? It has a lot of complexities in it, however simply put, okay? Another thing we think about when we talk about karma are habits. We just automatically do certain things because it's been a habit tendency from past. We continue to do it, or we picked it up and we continue to do it. Again, it reminds you to practice. Every time you get a chance, every time the anger shows up, stop, pause, and see if it's going to result in anything. And we're talking about true anger. We're not talking about, being assertive in some cases, okay? True anger, losing your mind, losing control. So we need to think about that. Is the result good or bad? Okay. Then we can think about how karma, when you do a karma, you have to have an intention to do something. You have to have an object. You have to have an action and result. Okay. If you do it inadvertently, it is not the intent, therefore it does not have the same consequences. So we need to understand that. The good news is you can purify it, right? Because things are impermanent, because mind can be changed, we can purify. And isn't that good? If you were static, unchangeable, impermanent, or permanent, if you were going to call it, if you were permanent, static, you would not be able to change that. So how lucky we are in this precious human rebirth that we can do something about it. And there are practices, and we went through that. We did a Vajrasattva practice. We went through the meaning of it. And these are practices that you commit to and say, yes, please stay with me. Please abide by me. Please help me, right? What are you doing? You're not praying to somebody outside, okay? You are changing your mind. That's the commitment to your higher self, to your mind, to your Buddha self. You're saying, I'm going to become a Buddha. I need to practice. And that's the whole point of this path, We can intellectualize this, we can argue with few things, we can go into circles with many things, and that's why they have the deeper modules where you can actually have those questions and answers in much more details, but at least understand the fact that how they've taken some really, really nice, juicy stuff and put it in an organized way for us, right? So we have purification practice. Then we went into, so first one was striving for happiness. We had the primer, we want to get refuge, we want to start practicing, we want to purify, you're striving to look for happiness. Now you have a little more conviction in it, you start to study and you understand the Four Noble Truths. It's the first thing in the middle scope. Okay, so we talked about the Four Noble Truths. So when Buddha actually became enlightened, he actually wandered for a couple of days thinking, this, what he just saw, what he learned, how is he going to explain that to somebody? Eventually winds up in a place called Sarnath, we talked about that. And his 5 disciples that had abandoned him previously actually joined him again, and he was able to teach. This is called the first turning of the wheel, the teaching. Okay, and he recognized the truth of suffering is number 1. Okay, and we talk about the suffering. Why? Because we want to be happy. We need to face it that in this samsara, as we live right now, we have a lot of delusions, we have a lot of imprints in us, and we want to purify. And so we need to recognize them. So when it talks about suffering, you need to break it down. You can call it complications, like Geshe-la would say. You can also say dissatisfaction in lives. You can sickness and old age and death and rebirth and karma. Okay, so many things that go on. Okay, that is called the first noble truth, truth of suffering. Okay, then you can also talk about, you know, within that there is a types of suffering. Okay, so just to even better understand suffering, we can call suffering of suffering. You get hungry. We live in a war zone. People are mean to you. You sometimes get things you don't want, and sometimes you don't get what you want. All of those are little dissatisfactions in life. You can call that a little bit of unhappiness. Then there's another one called suffering of change. I think we are a little more familiar with that. See, you're a working person and your job changes. Your boss changes. You have to move out of your home because of whatever the reasons are. Sometimes it's a little better reason, sometimes it's not. We also know that some of these things that we call happiness don't last long. Think of anything, right? We buy when it's new, we are excited, we go buy it, we spend the money, we look it up and we Google it and all kinds of stuff. After a while, what happens? Move on to the next thing. That happiness passes by. It does not last. So, right, you can see a person sitting in the sun going to the cold, and then it gets cold, he gets back in the sun again. So these are the type of what they call the second suffering of change. The third one is all pervasive, a little more subtle. Think about depression. Think about anxiety. It includes all your 5 aggregates. And 5 aggregates are form, feeling, discrimination, your mental activities and ideas and things like that, and your mind. All of them get involved. Right? It's a little deeper. So those are the kind of suffering we are talking about. These are all pervasive, or what they call compounding suffering. Okay? And this is because of contaminated karma and delusions. Okay? So we've just covered this. These are the 4 noble truths. And we just went through these 3. So then the second noble truth is cause of suffering. We already mentioned it's not a punishment or reward. It's simply a law. Thinking, acting, or speaking of disturbing emotions. And it stems from what they call the 3 poisons. So backwards, I would say ignorance is number 1, attachment and anger. Okay. And we defined ignorance in many ways last 2 classes. I have one more slide on it, we'll cover it. That's the root cause of all your problems. Just not knowing that that exaggerated view we have of inherent existence, not knowing things are dependent originating. We are interdependent. Think of anything. Did we not have parents? Do we not have blood that relies on food, that relies on, we have bones, we have all these things. Look at anything you eat, it comes from somewhere else. There's a tree involved, there's a fruit involved, there's a seed involved, there's a gardener involved, everything. We are interconnected. And when we have a big ego and it says me only, and that the me does not get what it wants, it's gonna be angry, doesn't like it. Right? So we gotta think in those ways. Causes attachment to things when you have a certain thing, and then we go into that cycle, which we'll talk about. And this all stems from uncontrolled, recurring birth, true cause of problems, right? Then we get into the cyclic birth. We die that way, we are thinking that way, we are becoming that way, that's our identification. We carry that seed forward, we take birth again. Depending on your karma, you go through that cycle again. Okay? So remember, if the fruit is there, you must have sown the seed. We talked about that. So then we talk about becoming your own therapist. You see books on it, become your own therapist too, right? Sometimes. So why? Because you are the boss. Nobody else is your boss. You are the boss. Your mind is yours. Right? And as Lama Zopa would say, we are all insane. It's just a question of degree. Right? So think about that for a while. You know, everything we are doing, we are learning in this path is what? Learning to change our mind to positive state of minds so that we can have future happiness. Like Geshe-la would say, let's ask anybody that likes to be unhappy all day. Nobody wants to be unhappy. People want happiness. Okay, so because we have this mindset with our own views and illusions, we think this is the way things are. And we need to recognize what is the way things exist. And that's when we get into shunyata or emptiness. Okay, so then once you have this ignorance in you, it becomes ego grasping, which becomes a delusion of the whole cyclic existence. So the workshop is where? In your mind. So then I ask a question, who is meditating? Who is practicing? Who is changing the mind? And who is integrating? You are. We are. So we are our own therapist. You can decide going forward that I will take a pause. I will not get into that, will swipe myself into that whirlpool of problems unnecessarily. Be skillful. Will listen better. Can't deal with it? How to slowly bow out. How not to lose your mind. Not to steal. Not to have covetousness. Not to be so jealous. Right? So you can start to work on those little things. But the ego says, oh, I'm very intelligent, so I have PhD, and I am this, and I am that, and this is the way it is, and that is the way it is. And you can put that all in front of you and just think, what is the root problem there? Then why are you not happy? That's what the workshop is in your mind. Okay? So one more time, let's go through this a little bit. So this is a linear way, spiritual way of explaining somebody. The idea, it is experiential. It is your own experiences. But like I said, ignorance is the root cause of problems. Not knowing how we exist. We don't know how things exist out there. And not only that, we think that we exist inherently. Somehow that I is so strong, right? It's not that the I does not exist at all. We just need to recognize it is not an independent, concrete I. And we'll go through a meditation today on that a little bit. And then your mind starts to work on those things, right? Those are mental formations. Then your mind grasps on it, and you start to crave those things. You grasp on those things. That's what your identity becomes. You become that way. That's all it runs in your mind. That's what you run after. And then what happens when you die? You take a rebirth, you go into mom and dad, name and form they call it. Then your sixth sense organs start to develop. You come in touch, contact, feelings, pleasure, not pleasure, neutral, they all start. And then the seeds become stronger and stronger. And again, you're carrying some of those karmic seeds plus what you develop, and you're back to aging and death again. And guess what? Because of that ignorance, go back again in circle. And so it's a very easy way of talking about it. It takes a little bit of deep diving. And then we talked about this beautiful picture. If you remember this, the wheel of life. And just for mindset, you can see the center, three figures in the center. You see a bird and a snake and a pig. Those are the three poisons. Okay. We can talk about the details, which is anger and ignorance and so forth. We can certainly talk about that. But that's what it is. And then based on that ignorant mind, now the other next, you see a black and a white, are your karmas. Good karmas and bad karma. And based on that, you see the next 6 sections talks about the 6 realms. Okay, the God realm, the demigod realm, the human realm, the ghost realms, and so forth. And all these things, depending on your karmic seeds and karmic activities, there's a 12 links at the outer circle. These are the very same thing, the ignorance, the compositional factors, and the craving and the grasping and so forth. Okay? Just so if you want to know, the center one, pig, is ignorance. The snake is supposed to be anger, and the bird is supposed to be detachment. It's all traditionally built into this, pictures-wise, but at least you understand those things now. Then if you look at the fierce figure on the top, that represents impermanence. You are in the grasp of that. Things are changing all the time. You're in that grasp. The moon depicts liberation, that you can liberate from this cycle. And the Buddha is pointing, saying, there's a path. Okay, you'll see that this picture depicted in many places at the entrance of a monastery or Gampas. You'll see that. Matter of fact, Kadampa Center has one right at the entrance. Okay, so something to know. And it kind of supports everything we've been talking about, right? You now know the 3 poisons, you know the karma, you know the 6 realms, you know the 12 links. Okay, just a quick, from last 2 classes, we may have shown this slide, but just to refresh, ignorance is literally not seeing that which exists, or the way in which it exists. There are basically 2 kinds: ignorance of karma, that you don't believe in it, you don't know that you can change and you can become positive, and ignorance of ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is how things exist. Okay, from this, everything stems. And then we need to understand that there are 2 truths that we talk about in Buddhism. Conventional, just to keep yourself in the middle. We can talk all about how we exist and how we are not this concrete I. And so the mind goes to that I don't exist. That is not good. There is something, right? You are there, you're functioning, you're going to work, you have a name. So it does come into that perspective, but not in the way we think that it is solid. When I call myself Rainy or Hemant or Linda, that doesn't mean it is static. It's simply a name. It's simply a label. If you were to break yourself into billions of particles right now, where is Rainy? And where is Linda? And where is Hemant? Where is anybody? Take anything, break it down. Nanoparticles, atoms, molecules, it's nothing. So you have to have these 2 minds. You function, and we'll talk about this a little later, how you function. That's called method, practice. And understand the wisdom of reality, how things really are. And once you understand this, you're not going to get upset very quickly, because you know the mind of the other person wants to be happy too. He may have some karmic seeds, mind may be deluded. I don't want to be another angry person to that person. So you learn to be much more humble, or you can be assertive if you need to be, but you don't get into and become another angry person. So it helps you tremendously. And if you can cut the root of this out, then you can liberate yourself. There's no more attachment and no more craving and no more anger and so forth. Okay, so just at least for the understanding purposes. So here's a good statement. This is that I that exists in dependence upon its body and mind. It performs actions. It creates karma, you and me, like this, and it experiences those results according to the law of cause and effect, as described by the 12 links. Such an I is not truly independent. Okay, we think we are independent, unique, just me. Just think about that. It is part of a long continuum of actions and reactions. You come together, you function with that mind, and you do things, and here's your opportunity to make a change. So you look at this beautiful saying in Wisdom Energy, if you've read the book, not even an atom of samsara or nirvana has any such thing as inherent existence. Yet there is no fraud in saying that all these atoms are dependent arising from cause and effect. Please bless me so that I may realize Nagarjuna's great view, right, of the non-contradictory, mutually beneficial functions of the two levels of truth. So you function in a positive way, you help yourself to change into positive states of mind, but don't concretize that you are this unique thing that that you're gonna be permanent. Okay, we all change. Look at you just 10 years ago, you're not the same person. It's impermanence. When you were a child, when you were a teenager, look at you now, whatever your case is right now. And we will age and we will die. Mind will continue. So that's the path. We are taking slowly, we're moving forward. So today, we have good time. We're doing good time here. We'll do a nice little meditation. Time permitting, we'll get into the third scope on equanimity, understand a little bit about bodhicitta, the 6 perfections. We'll talk about the method, 9 stages of calm abiding, again, all time permitting, and of course, we'll conclude the great scope, and then we'll talk about the next session. So at this point, let's get into the meditative position. And just focus on your breath for about 2 minutes. Just bring yourself to center yourself a little bit and be in a comfortable position. So we begin this meditation on a breath to relax and calm our mind. And motivate yourself strongly to do this meditation in order to finally become enlightened for the sake of all beings. Okay, now, with the alertness of a spy, slowly and carefully become aware of the I. Who or what is it that thinks, feels, and meditates? How does it appear to you? Is your I a creation of your mind? Or is it something that exists concretely and independently in its own right? Now try to locate it. Where is this I? Is it in your head? Or in your eyes, in your heart, in your hands, in your stomach, in your feet? Carefully consider each part of your body, including the organs, blood vessels, and nerves. Can you find your I? It may be very small or subtle, so consider the cells, the atoms, the subatomic particles. If you do think that your I is part of the body, then what would happen if that part were removed in an operation or damaged in an accident? And what happens to that I when your body ceases to function at death? Perhaps you think your mind is an I, is the I. But the mind is constantly changing stream of thoughts, feelings, and other experiences, coming and going in rapid succession. It's never the same from one moment to next. Then which of this experience is the I? Is it a loving thought, an angry thought, a happy feeling, a depressed feeling? So if you think that your I is one of these experiences, then what happens to it when the kind of experience is not present in your mind? If your I is love, for example, then when your mind is filled with only anger, does the I go somewhere else or disappear altogether? Is there no I at that time? Or maybe you have many I's, an angry one, a loving one, a frightened one, etc. So if you cannot find the I in your body or your mind, then could it be something else? Is there some extra part of you other than your body and mind? After all, we say my body, my mind, implying the existence of something else that owns this too. If so, what is it? And where is it found? And what kind of phenomena is it? Examine every possibility you can think of. Again, look at the way your I actually appears, how it feels to you. After this search for the I, do you notice any change? Do you still believe that it is solid and real as you felt before? Does it still appear to exist independently in itself? In and of itself. So now, next, mentally disintegrate your body. Imagine all the atoms separating and floating apart, billions and billions minute particles scattered throughout the space. Imagine that you can actually see this. Now disintegrate your mind. Let every thought, feeling, sensation, perception float away. Then check your feeling of the I. Where is it? What is it? So Do not make the mistake of thinking my body is not the I and my mind is not the I, therefore I don't exist. You do exist, but not in the way you instinctively feel as something independent and inherent. That's the key. Conventionally, yourself exists in dependence upon your mind and body, and this combination is the basis to which conceptual thinking ascribes the name I, self, Mary, Harold, Rainey, Linda, Hemant, and so forth. This is the you that is sitting and meditating and wondering, do I exist? So here's the next step of thinking. Whatever exists is necessarily dependent upon causes and conditions or parts and names for its existence. We talked about it, labels. A car, for example, is a collection of pieces, a steel, a plastic, a rubber, and an engine, etc., put together by people in a factory. We give it a name, car, to this collection, but we look for a real, concrete, independently existing car, it cannot be found. The car is not the engine, it's not the tire, it's not the steering wheel, but we put it together, we label it because it functions a certain way, and we call it a car. So it's a label. So conventionally, things exist dependently, and understanding dependence is a principal cause for understanding the ultimate nature of emptiness. Let me repeat. So conventionally, things exist dependently, and understanding dependence is the principal cause for understanding the ultimate nature of emptiness, that we are all independent, arising, or interdependent. The conventional nature of an object, it's its dependence upon other things. And its ultimate nature is the emptiness of inherent, independent existence. I'll repeat that. So conventionally, things exist dependently. And understanding dependence is the principal cause for understanding their ultimate nature, emptiness. The conventional nature of an object is its dependence upon other things, and its ultimate nature of its emptiness of inherent independence existence. So think now about how your body exists conventionally, in dependence upon its skin, blood, bones, legs, arms, organs, and so forth. In turn, each of these things is in dependence upon their own parts, like cells and atoms and subatomic particles. So think about your mind, how it exists in dependence upon thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sensations, and how in turn each of these exist in dependence upon their previous consciousness experiences that give rise to it. Now go back to your feeling of that self or I. Think about how you exist conventionally in dependence upon your mind and body, and name the self's parts or the parts. When the body feels hungry or cold, for example, you think, I am hungry, I am cold. When the mind has an idea about something, you say, I think. When you feel love for someone, you say, I love you. When introducing yourself, you say, I am so-and-so. Apart from the sense of I that depends upon ever-flowing, ever-changing streams of body and mind, is that an I that is solid, unchanging, independent? The mere absence of such an inherently existing I is the emptiness of self. So just dedicate this meditation by saying, let's finish this session with conclusion as to how your self exists. Conclude by dedicating sincerely any positive energy and insight you may have gained to the enlightenment of all beings. Think that this meditation is just one step along the path to finally achieving direct insight into emptiness, and thus cutting the root of suffering and dissatisfaction. Okay, you can bring your attention back. So I hope that gives you some level of understanding of when we talk about emptiness, because words can play little games in our mind because we've already labeled certain things as certain, we perceive it a certain way, but at least you understand about what is interdependency, dependent arising, and how this concretizing I is the problem. It's not saying that you are just a proof of air, nobody's saying that, but how these parts come together, how it's dependent on its bloods and bones and arms and legs, and it again is dependent on atoms and molecules, and goes on, right? So you can see that you don't inherently exist. You exist because dependent on those parts, causes and conditions. And somebody labels us, and then we think we are this almighty. Okay? Good introduction. There's a whole class on emptiness. And you go through it again and again till it starts to settle and filter a little bit more. And I encourage you, you will have questions in your mind. This is just the beginning. It takes a little while to really gel, because you know why? You're undoing the normal processes that the way we think. We've been so marketed, I would say, by thinking a certain way, and we think that's the way things are. And so read a little bit more about it. Ask some questions. Go to Geshe-la, go to Sangha members, go to some students, advanced students. Maybe they can guide you a little bit, but it takes a little bit of doing, a little bit of practice, a little bit of thinking. And once you get that and you practice on it, you're going to start to remove that root of all the problems, ignorance. You start to see how things are. And when you understand how things exist, you're liable not to get too angry very quickly, because you know how things are. We are all interconnected, how we exist. So getting angry is not going to solve any issue, it's just going to hurt you. Right? So think in those terms. So let's move into the third scope. So you've gone through scope 1, you've gone through scope 2. So scope 1 prepared you to strive for happiness. Scope 2 says, geez, I don't want to be in this suffering world and go through this cycle again and again and again. I want to renunciate. I want to yearn for liberation. I want to not have a roommate that chatters all the time. I want peace. I want happiness. So that is renunciation, not going to the cave and running away. You can do that too, but that's not the point. You have a home, you have life, move on, but at least now pause a little bit and see what you're putting in your mind. That's the whole idea behind it. Okay, so we renunciate. So there are 3 principal aspects of the path. First one is renunciation. Second one is understanding emptiness. Third one is developing bodhicitta. Okay, so we're going to get into that. So first, let's talk about equanimity. So now, remember we said the first 2 scopes are like the wisdom wing. You prepare, you renunciate, you understand the concept of how things exist. That's the wisdom. You would be liberated, would be called an arhat if you were to master that. It's an immense step, big step, but we want to get fully enlightened. So now, while I have this form, feeling, discrimination, mental volitions and ideations in my head and consciousness, how do we function? Okay, so that's the key piece we want to talk about. So let's start with one thing we're going to talk about is 6 perfection, but we're going to first put some foundation, equanimity. What's an enemy? what's a friend and what is a stranger. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say, first of all, let's define it. Equanimity is an attitude that moves you away from enemies, friends, strangers, using logical arguments to break down the ego's illogic. Who creates enemies? We do. Who creates friends? We do. Who are strangers? We really don't care because we don't interact too much with the strangers, right? That's our mind also. Nothing to gain, nothing to lose. See how those things come into it. And you also know a friend can be an enemy later. An enemy could turn into a friend. And sometimes even a stranger becomes a friend. Right? So we know all those things. So there is no inherent enemy, friend or stranger. They are simply projections of your delusions. Objectively, these people are the same. So it's a specific state of mind, and it's an attitude and recognition that enemy, friends, and strangers are equal. He can be fat and skinny. In terms of intelligence, we can be different. But we are all equal in our wish to be happy. Okay? The object of intellectual ignorance are what we call strangers. We simply don't know. Okay, not knowing, ignorant of them. The object of aversion are what we call enemies. Could be an object or a person. And the object of attachment we call friends. Why? They're friends, they suit you, they agree with you, they like what you like, they appear pleasing to you, they're ones who can afford to love, you can afford to love. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, your love right now is unstable, it's got strings attached. Okay? The object of aversion is the opposite of that. Like, let's give an example. It was a car going by, and another car passed by and pulled that poodle from that car and threw him on the highway. Traffic would come to stop, you would go yelling at the person, and you would say, what an idiot, right? What a crime. If the same thing happened and somebody pulled a rat out of that car and threw it away, they may even call him a hero. Not all of us. Some of us would say, okay, he killed a rat, not the dog. But you can see where our mind likes something and doesn't like something. Same crime occurred, same tragedy occurred. But one was a rat, labeled rat. One was a poodle. Oh my gosh, how can you? So think about that, where this all stems from. Our mind. I should say right here, our mind, not brain. Right? Just a small example. Why? Because we are attached to the dog. This is an example. And we are not attached to the rat. And let's take a look at the closer at the enemy. Remember, we need to think that they have family members, somebody that loves them, they have a spouse, they have a brother, sister, whatever the case is. So they're loved. Okay? His boss, that person's boss may think that person is a great person, but you don't like that person because they don't suit you. Right? And I will take it further, a little more thinking in this. This is something that I've learned over the classes is, yeah, we look at divisiveness in politics and so many things. And yeah, there are people we consider maybe harmful. So do something about it. You can go and put a board up, vote certain way, but sitting here and getting angry and losing your mind over it, is it going to help that person or you? Like Geshe-la says, now you have two crazy people. So you can take action. You can voice your thoughts, right? But no reason to lose your mind over it, just so you understand that. So they neither harm you or help you. These are neutral people, and you simply don't care. So that would be neutral people. So just in the conclusion, there is no inherent enemy, friend, or stranger. They are simply projections or delusions of your mind. Objectively, these people are the same. So there's equanimity for you, how things exist. Bodhicitta. Okay, big topic. We're going to make it a little more concise so you can read what it is. And then I will say a few more words while you're listening. You can read. So bodhicitta, and I'm taking a piece of paper. I took this from one of the readings I have. And just to make sure that I translate it properly, it says bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. It's translated as awakening mind or a thought of enlightenment. It's a commitment to embark on a path of awakening and be a bodhisattva, one dedicated to liberation of all beings. Bodhicitta is born of compassion, the desire to free all beings from suffering, even those who wish to harm us or consider us enemies, one of the foundations of Mahayana tradition. Okay? This is a central vow to Bodhisattva's way. Okay? So bodhicitta. The main thing you need to understand is a born of compassion, the desire to free all beings from suffering. And look at what a beautiful statement that is. Whatever joy there is in this world, all comes from desiring others to be happy. And whatever suffering there is in this world, all comes from desiring myself to be happy. Self-cherishing, they call it. Okay, and you can take bodhicitta even a little further. So let's take a little bit further. So we talked about us breaking down into molecules and subparticles, right? That's how everything is basically, just coming together in form due to karma and whatever the background is, right? However, think of how many people have helped you. The food you eat today, your birth, your parents, your teachers, clothes you wear, home you stay in, everything, think about somebody's helping you. They would say, if your mind goes back and back and back and back eons, they've all been touched. We've been all touched by each other. You know, I always think of it like, how can I picture this in my mind? And I say, I take a bottle, put some salt in it and shake it. Those grains will touch each other at some point. Same way, they've been your mothers. That's why Geshe-la and they will say, we've all been your mothers, we've been each other's mother sentient beings. We've been each other's mothers. That's what the mother comes from the word caring or taken care of. Somebody who took care of us.
Hey, Matt, we have a, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question. Do you want to take it now?
Sure, sure.
Okay, go ahead and unmute, Jeevan.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I just had a quick question about this topic. And so in the Hinayana path, the bodhicitta is not part of the Hinayana path?
So Hinayana, I would say, very clear black and white way, not emphasized. They are still compassionate people. They're very humble people. They've gone through practices to understand emptiness, but they carry subtle cognitive afflictions. Certain habits are still inherent there, so they can liberate their mind, but certain seeds remain. They say that in Mahayana path, that when you truly want to get enlightened, become a Buddha, then this is a necessary part of your practice and understanding that no matter what happens, you know, I look at it this way. This is Hemant speaking. This is not somebody else. This is my example of my way of contemplating on this. When you have a scab on your hand, though everything bothers you, you want to remove that, right? You want to help that. You want to heal that. Same way, when there is this samsara and so many problems, the bodhisattvas are spontaneously moving to help others. Yeah. They generate that. Even Buddha, he was given a kingdom back. He was given empire back, and they say, we'll give you all these riches. And he says, no, I have to awaken others. I have to help others, right? And so you can see even from his practices, he wanted to be of benefit to others. And again, there's a whole study on this. This is not necessarily helping in like money-wise only and all that. Our mind will go to very minute things like that. In general, however you can create merits, you can teach, you can support, you can help in many ways. First of all, there's two ways. You can have currently you can practice bodhicitta as you start with yourself first, self-love yourself, love close ones, grow into community, slowly expand yourself, or have a strong wish that you want to become a Buddha so that you can continue to benefit others, right? So a couple of ways to look at it. But in Hinayana, it is what my understanding is that it is still individual liberation. It's still thinking of self-liberating, which is tremendous. But Mahayana takes it further, that we not only think of us, but everybody, all sentients.
So one other question: so an arhat who has mastered the second scope, I'm really curious to know what they would, how they would respond to what you're saying, and this part of the path, and would they just say, oh, you don't need to do that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that is so true, right? I mean, it all depends on individuals. And obviously, if you're of that path, they would think that they have developed sufficient compassion. They've been practicing to liberate their mind. But if you were to look at scriptures and traditions, you will find a lot of things written about you need to become Hinayana to even get into Mahayana, right? So it's a stepping stone. It's not like this or that. It's part of the path. You're going through first scope, you're going to go through second scope. But what a Mahayana practitioner would say, that there are some minor afflictions staying behind because it is for self. So, and Mahayana is for the ultimate, more universal. And that is the difference between the two. And certainly, if you talk to individuals, they'll all have their little take on it. But that's what we would say. It is not one is bad and one is good. That's not what we are saying here. It is simply, this is the path of Mahayana practitioner, and Hinayana is a practitioner that is working very hard to overcome all kind of delusions to become liberated for oneself only. Okay? There's a deeper studies into this basics of Buddhism. You will understand different schools, different thoughts, and how subtleties are there. And you have to really deep dive and understand the whole understanding of how this tradition is. Okay. Good topic to discuss with even Geshe-la. Would be a great question. All right. So let's move into 6 perfections. So remember we said that first 2 scopes, we're talking wisdom wing, right? Just like he was just bringing up, self-liberation, tremendous achievement. You can see the emptiness of things, powerful. But you are here right now. And so let's think about how one should function right now. So it's a great way to look at it. I wanted to see if I have some notes on this, which I don't. So let's talk about generosity a little bit. Yeah, so I have a little note from Lama Yeshe. I put it in my notes just to make sure I say it. The whole idea is making your life meaningful as we go on to this journey to our ultimate goal. So the function of wisdom is to eliminate ignorance, right? That's the function of wisdom. The function of method is to practice the physical and environmental practices that we have. Perfection of body and mind, becoming omniscience and powered for good qualities we want to generate, full of power. For that, we need these 6 perfections. So we talk about generosity. They say generosity is a wish-fulfilling jewel with which you can fulfill the hopes of sentient beings. It is the basis of activity of bodhisattvas in that it develops a selfless and undaunted courage to lead all sentient beings into enlightenment. So let's think through that. They would say when you have money, it is the fruit of generosity. One must think about generosity is not always money. Your time, your effort, teaching, giving in any way you can is all part of generosity. Even if you think about from a Mahayana perspective, it is not thinking of self, it's thinking of somebody else. Already your ego is busted at that point to some point because you're thinking of the happiness of others. So generosity works that way. It opens us up to sentient beings. They say that when Bodhisattva gives something, they feel like we feel when we get something. That's how happy they get when they can be generous. They're so happy to give. Okay? And believe me, who is the benefactor? Ultimately, we are, and that's the point. You give, you will receive. With ego, compassion has a really low ceiling. Beyond ego, compassion can soar limitlessly. So the second perfection is morality. Okay, there are three kinds of morality. You know, we talked about the non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind, but refraining from that is a morality. Restraining oneself from committing the non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. Second morality is morality of creating merits, doing good things, helping. And third one is benefiting others, morality of benefiting others. Helping others, helping your enemies, all of those activities, good morality. Any questions on morality? It's very easy to understand ethical behavior is positive mind states. Positive mindset states provides happiness in future life. Patience, this is a big one. What is impatience then? Impatience, anger, aversion, irritation, all are annoyance, all variations of impatience, right? All variations of that. So think of how one reacts to something. Have you ever gone to a red light and start cursing when it becomes red, when you're running late? You even justify it, right? The stupid light. And just when you think you're going to be over the red light and your patience is about thin, a school bus pulls over in front of you. And then you start thinking, why does it happen to me? The school bus is doing its job. The red light is doing its job. It's your mind. Great time to practice. Right? It's a good time to practice. It's actually a brave action. They call it patience. It truly takes, patience is not just waiting for something, but truly is a time to practice. You really control your anger down at that point. And you see it rising. Oh, another red light, another red light. Oh my gosh, here comes the school bus. I'm going to be so late and all this will happen and my boss will be mad and all this stuff. Just practice patience. Very good virtue. There are so many people, if you think about people who persevere, Armstrong, the bicyclist, or a kid that wanted to join and become a league basketball player, goes in there, never gives up, works very hard. There are times when you feel exhausted and saying, this is not for me, but you keep doing it, and guess what? You are that bicyclist that can climb a mountain. You are in that NBA now playing basketball. And think of somebody who says, oh, this is not for me. Right? You give up and you don't achieve. People who have jobs and work very hard for an IPO or something like that. Look at all the work that goes into it and what happens when you get that. So patience is a great practice. It is an attitude of courageousness. Okay? So welcome the opposite. as Venerable Robina would say. Be brave and try it. Okay? You can welcome this is a great way to practice when a problem comes up. Rather than saying, oh, poor me, say this is the time to practice, see how we deal with it. It's a great way to practice patience. You finally get good at it and you'll become courageous. And it just will make you much stronger, wiser person. Okay. So, enthusiasm and joyful effort. We are at 8:15. I only have this one, concentration, 9 stages of meditation, and in the end, a little bit of emptiness. And then we are on to the next class. So what I will do, because it's 8:15, I will cover this in the next class. I will respect your time and patience that you've had in the class. So out of that respect, we'll go to dedication, okay? So let's just sit nicely in your meditative position, and I'll just pass through this real quick. And let's dedicate. How fantastic throughout these sessions, we've listened to so many things, trying to process them, analyze them, think about them, aspire, have courage. It's my wish to benefit others. We dedicate all of this, the sowing of all these seeds, for the sake of sentient beings. And when we do become a Buddha, who else will be of benefit? Other sentient beings. So this is for them long term. That's why we are sowing the seeds. And may this compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemant. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hemant. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Hemant. Thank you, Linda.
Absolutely. So
so much.
again, next week is the last class for this module. So we will see you in a week.
Yeah, so next class, we'll put this whole thing together in a nice path, some Q&A sessions, a good meditation on bodhicitta. So for homework, continue to read. If you're not reading, please take your little time to read through those reading materials. It will certainly benefit you. Some of the questions also are answered in some of those readings. So hopefully there will be a nugget in there for us. And then I am more than happy, after this is over, we can have a private chat, we can talk, we can reach out to Geshe-la and ask any questions we have and really help each other out, okay? So no worries at all. Thank you for your time, patience, and being in this class today.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Hemant.
Hemant.
Thank you,
Linda.
Hemant. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Linda.
Night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.